Chris, before we come to the present, let's go
Yep.
back in time.
Yep.
How old were you when you picked up your first guitar?
16. So I was into like Coldplay, Oasis, The Verve, David Gray. That was early 2000s, and I thought, oh, I'll have a guitar and play like them. So I asked one for Christmas, and I got one when I was 16. And by the boxing, I thought this is going back. Like, it's too hard. I persevered anyway, and then eventually got better and better. Then I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means, but I'm okay. So yeah.
And how long did it take you before you were strumming and going from one chord seamlessly to another?
Probably, I mean, it's probably a year or two, really. I mean, obviously, you keep getting better as you get older, but probably, it was a year or two before I could sort of play okay-ish, put a couple of chords together. So, yeah, probably a good year, I'd say, at least.
Well, I can remember picking a guitar up when I met Debbie as my wife. Now we just got married. I was in my early 20s. And I learned to play D, and I learned to play G, but unfortunately I couldn't put the two together.
Well, it's just, I reckon you'll be fine. We can teach you.
I'll tell you what, I was nowhere near as good as that. But for me, it just was something that I didn't really gel at, and I didn't really stick with it. But you did.
Yeah.
You went on to play in church, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was... I started playing it like so. You don't realise that the better you get at something, the more you realise how bad you were at the time, I suppose. So persevered, and then obviously eventually at church I'd get involved with playing and stuff. And it really was the breakthrough to start playing my own music and writing my own stuff was I went to my first proper concert. It would have been 2004. It was a band called British Sea Power, and I remember going to this gig and being blown away and thinking, wow, I want to be like those, So that was pretty what inspired me to then start writing my own stuff and playing in bands, really.
Can you remember the very first song that you wrote?
Oh, goodness me. I think it might have been a song called When I Let You Down, actually, which goes a bit like this. I want to know why you still love me when all I do is let you down. I wanna know why you care for me when all I do is let you down. I wanna know. It's probably the first one, I think.
Brilliant. I've heard that one before, Chris, actually.
Yeah.
And you then started a band called The Lightning Strikes.
Correct,
Where did that name come from?
Oh, goodness me. Well, it was just... I remember going on Google was quite early then, but like going on band generator names and I'm thinking, oh, I like lightning, I like thunderstorm. So yeah, it was one of those strange things. It just sort of, just the lightning strikes. I don't know where it really came from at the time, but it's only good at the time. But it's quite a good name, I think, looking back.
And your guitar, Chris,
Yeah.
like all of us, we take up a hobby, we get into it. It would be true to say that the guitar you have now is not the one you started with all the way back then.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, the first one I had, it was on Christmas Day when I was 16, it was one from Argos. I think it was Encore, they were called. And I'm sure they'd do some good guitars, but the one I had was incredibly basic and it was really poor. And then I moved on to my next guitar. I think I had it from a guy called Dan Moore, which you would remember Dan Moore as well. And it was from a charity shop, actually. He bought it. It had in the back like Coventry School Year 6 carved into it or something. And then I bought one from Wolverhampton. It's Salop Street. There's a guitar shop there, and it was this again a terrible. I think it was £60. I mean, it's going about 15 years, but it was still cheap then, and it was terrible. And then I got my first good guitar. Probably 7 years ago, which was my 30th birthday, which I got bought this by my mother and father-in-law, and it's the best acoustic guitar I've had, actually. I've since bought a couple second-hand on Facebook, which are quite nice as well, but yeah, it's gradually got progressively better, thankfully, with the instruments.
And with the Lightning Strikes, predominantly the members of the band were from church.
That's right, yeah.
But you didn't play exclusively in church itself.
No, absolutely not. I mean, we played quite a few. We played in Birmingham, lots of venues there, Wolverhampton, Coventry. We played, I remember Chesterfield a few times. So we played all sorts of venues, really. I mean, one of the best gigs, I was actually saying to the band that we're in now on Thursday when we rehearsed last, that one of the best gigs we played was at Tipton Family Church, actually, which I remember it was like packed to the rafters, and we played at some quite big venues in Birmingham and that. But that was probably that was a standout gig, 'cause it was just packed. It was a great atmosphere, actually. But yeah, we certainly didn't play exclusively Christian venues. We played a few churches, but mainly it was probably just pubs and clubs really.
And I can remember on one occasion when you had a guest bass
That is
player.
correct, yes. So your daughter Miriam, I mean, goodness me, I bet that's got to be 14 years ago. She's brilliant. I mean, she was so good, and I mean, and also, I mean, she wasn't very old at the time, but certainly she was more attractive than me and the other members of the band, certainly. So yeah, it was great. I remember it well. It was at Kingston Christian Centre actually, and I think the videos are on YouTube somewhere. I'm sure even after all these years.
Yeah, I can remember taking those videos, and as you mentioned, Chris, so many years ago, but it just seems like 5 minutes ago, doesn't it? Time flies.
I can remember the night really well. I remember Miriam coming and rehearsing with us once, and just absolutely nailing it on the night, just perfect, you know. So yeah, 14 years ago, crazy times really.
And you wrote a number of songs, of course, during your time with the Lightning Strikes.
Absolutely.
Anyone that stands out for you in particular, and why?
There's a few. I mean, probably maybe Euphoria. And I mean that one is sort of just talking about sort of. I mean, it's a good tune first and foremost, but probably it just talks about you know, as a Christian, that's sort of the hope, you know, of what's to come. Euphoria fills the air, joy as people join the streets, enemies embrace as friends. Victory now sounds all around, tears of joy they fall. This hope has hit this town, the war now it's over. Let it turn on peace rain.
When you write a song, Chris,
what
comes first, the tune or the words, or does it depend on the particular song?
It does depend. I mean, I'm writing some new stuff now, and I've got a few tunes already sort of ready, and then some half-written lyrics. One of the hardest things I think is with the tunes, it's you sort of that they get written fairly quickly. With the actual lyrics, you might get a good verse or a good chorus, and you think, I've got to write another 2 verses now. So that's one of the hardest things I find is I can write 10 songs, not in a lot of time, but then it's finished and it's like I've got a chorus, got a verse, but then I need to do a second verse, or I need to ideally get a word that rhymes with that for that part of the song. So normally I'll have like a song where I've got, say, lyrics here and music there, and I think that might work well together. And other times it might be I've got a good song, a good tune, and I match lyrics to it. So yeah, it's a mixture really.
And as we know, life is about seasons, and seasons do come to an end. Not always for bad reasons, of course, but the Lightning Strikes, the time did come to an end.
It did. Yeah, I mean, it was a shame because I mean, goodness me, the last gig we played properly was probably 2010 or something. Because obviously, there's like, you know, seasons of life. Our bassist got married, I started university and started a job, which was funny hours. So we never really came to an end. But then in mid 2010s, we started rehearsing again, and we had children. So we did start rehearsing the end of September, end of 2019, and we were getting quite good actually. Then we got to COVID, of course, and that was it. All the rehearsal rooms shut, and then we did look at starting again in the last year or so. But for different reasons, you know, it wasn't able to do it really. So we're all really good friends, and I was actually speaking to Neil, the bassist, today about sort of with the band I'm in now, sort of coming along, and you know, it would be nice to meet up really because I haven't seen each other for a while. Well, before COVID, you know, there's that sort of pre-COVID and post-COVID, isn't there? So. Yeah, we're still really good friends, so and we'll still be, you know, regularly meeting up, I'm sure.
Well, that brings us nicely to the present, because you also moved church as well. You go to a church in Penn, you're involved in the worship there. Yeah. What prompted you to start Billy Wicks and the Hoverhawks?
Well, it was, I mean, when it was looking like the band, the Lightning Strikes wasn't going to happen again, I was writing just at that time anyway, so I thought, oh, I'd love to do something. And I was looking at maybe going solo and, like, you know, sort of going and doing a bit on my own. I thought, well, it's not the same as being in a band. So I started recording stuff under the name Billy Wicks and the Hoverhawks, and it was me recording the bass and the guitars and so on with the drum machine. And then I remember with the worship team, it's me, a guy called Mark, another guy called Mark, and a guy called James. And the drummers is always on the drums, but the other three of us alternate and we lead each week in taking turns. And I was thinking, I'd love it if I would play with, but I thought maybe they won't. So I sort of dropped it in one Sunday, like, oh, I've wrote some new stuff. If you want to come and, like, you know, have a jam. And they were like, yeah, I'd love to. And I didn't know how serious it was going to be at that stage, but all of them really are enthusiastic, and we're rehearsing once or twice a week, really, and we were all really excited about it, actually. So, yeah, looking forward to start playing some gigs really soon.
So the band is essentially the members of the worship band at church.
That's right, yeah.
So you're all Christians,
That's right,
but it's not really a Christian band.
No, not at all. That's right. It's you know, ultimately, with a lot of the songs, I mean, like with the last song and with other songs that you'll see, you know, as a Christian, you'll see the references there. But if you're not a Christian, it wouldn't be a block to sort of enjoy the music at all, you know. So, you know, we just want the music to be sort of passionate and, you know, loud and fun. And with the lyrics, I mean, like I say, if you look into them close, you'll see, oh, I get what he may be saying there, but ultimately, it's not like sort of worship music at all. So I think, you know, people could come along and really enjoy it, whether you're a Christian or whether you're not.
And you are a committed Christian, Chris. Your faith is important to you.
Yes,
Do you see the band as important in that sense, that you can portray perhaps a side of Christianity that many people wouldn't relate to?
Absolutely. I think, you know, as you say, the sort of sandal wearing, sort of stereotypical Christian, you know, I don't think, you know, certainly most Christians are like that at all. And I think, like with music, I mean, I see a lot of, I mean, I love Christian music, I love worship stuff, but I find that I'd love to see some bands that are, you know, the bands that I like, but actually who happen to be Christians, who, you know, put a bit of, what's the word, you know, question life. And I think that's what my songs are. A lot of them is, they're just talk about general life, you know, the big things, life, death, relationships, love, everything that, you know, and probably looks at it really as, for me as a Christian, what it means to me. So I think it is important, you know, to sort of see that all Christians aren't just these sandal wearing sort of boring people at all. And I think if you came to one of our gigs, you would see that, you know, I think you'd enjoy it, and it wouldn't be the stereotypical what you'd expect Christians and musicians to be like, I suppose. So yeah.
And when I came across Billy Wicks and the Hoverhawks for the first time, it was on Twitter.
Yes,
And as soon as I saw the name, now to most people, they're probably thinking, what's this all about? Who's Billy Wicks?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, Billy Wicks isn't a person.
Not at all. Well, so I did, Stuart being the avid bird watcher and the knowledge you've got, I'm sure Stuart would have known, I wasn't sure. But yeah, Billy Wicks is, as Stuart said before we had this interview, it's the East Anglian dialect for a barn owl. So I love my birds of prey, and the Hoverhawks obviously is dialect again, sort of probably a few hundred years ago for kestrels. So I love kestrels and barn owls. And basically, when I was working under this band name, and it was just myself, that's quite a cool name. And I was hoping that the other lads in the band would agree. And I said, Billy Wicks and Hoverhawks. And there's a bit of like eyebrows raised. But I said, if you go on Google and type in, it's with a first hit. So they're like, yeah, we'll keep it like that. So yeah, that's where the name came from.
So you were practicing and singing together anyway.
Yeah.
Now you're doing it as a band as opposed to the church worship band.
Exactly, yeah.
How are things going?
Really good. So I mean, we've got we're pretty much ready to gig really. So what we're going to do is probably in the next couple of weeks we're going to go and play. There's a venue in Kings Heath where it's like you sort of book your slot, as it were, and you turn up with your instruments and plug in and play. So we're going to do a couple of gigs, I think, this side of Christmas, and then next year we'll sort of look at doing some like proper gigs, as it were. So this is like an open mic night in effect, so just to give us some live experience, because rehearsals are going great. But when you start playing live, you're all fingers and thumbs, everything changes, you know, that adrenaline. So that's the plan. And obviously we'll be recording some material in the new year, some live stuff and some actual studio stuff, probably record at the church. I think we've got some stuff there. So that's the plan, really.
Well, Chris, thank you for your time today. Really appreciated it. The insight into your own musical life and, of course, the band as well, your progression through the years. Do you want to take us out with something from Billy Wicks
absolutely.
and the Hoverhawks?
So this is called Never So Alive. Let me in your horse-drawn carriage, put aside a space for me. No need for sentimental goodbyes, 'cause I'm not staying for too long. I my side.